great honor to give you an overview of the aluminium sector with regards to greenhouse gas emissions. So what you can see here is our global emissions are at 1.1 billion tons currently, which is about 2% of global emissions. And we are publishing them annually. And historically, what we could see, so you have here two data points. So the brown one is the aluminium production. This is primary and recycling production, and the emissions emitted by the sector. And historically, if production went up, emissions went up. If production went down, emissions went down. But what you can see here, and this is a really nice slide, I would say by 2020, you saw kind of a decoupling of the production.
We did at Novelis in terms of performance in the past months, years, and what innovations are we looking at, which we think is going to keep the momentum going. So last year, for our fiscal year 24, we achieved a reduction of CO2 emissions of 27% compared to our baseline of 2016. Now, obviously, in line with the theme of this Climate Week, the time is now. We decided this is not enough. We need to go faster. We need to go further.
In our refinery, we have been investing. We have been investing in decarbonization in our process. But in our refinery, we replaced our boiler from fossil fuel and gas to biomass. This replacement was responsible for 60% of reduction in our refinery. Last year, our performance was 0.2 aluminum. According to CRU, it is the lowest result in refinery in the world. In the second and most important step in terms of emissions, smelters, we also have been operating with a good performance. It was possible because, as I mentioned, we have generated 100% of our power energy, and it was responsible for this performance. In spite of the fact we have already a good result, we have challenged ourselves to become better, to reduce 40% by 2030.
Considering that packaging can be up to 40% of our customers' carbon footprint, we're committed to provide solutions that bring value to them, but also to our shareholders and the planet. That's the reason that last year we published our climate transition plan, which is a robust, transparent, science-based, and 1.5 aligned pathway to, again, become a fully decarbonized business and reach net zero by 2050. We have an interim target by 2030, which is to reduce our emissions by 55% across scopes 1, 2, and 3. This requires that we reach 85% recycled content by then, and we are at 70 right now, which means a 2% increase since 2022 and an 8% increase since 2021. We have reduced between 2022 and 2023 our Scope 1 emissions by 11% and our Scope 2 emissions by 50%.
And we are here to share, listen, and learn also from you. What's the best way forward for our industry? We'd like to start by saying our industrial metal is very essential for decarbonization of global economy. So even the chairs we are sitting on at the moment, it's all aluminium. So really it's very difficult to imagine a life without aluminium. Talking about decarbonization and the demand, I mean, because of these essential materials, we believe the demand will be doubled by 2040. And we believe the metal going forward, I'll say the low carbon globally will increase from 31 to 75% by 2040. It's really amazing journey. And we are looking forward now with our company. We have very ambitious plan to grow our business in aluminium. We would like to be a real global company. We believe we were the first company who basically started producing green metal in 2021 using the solar power we have in Dubai. They will help us also to develop our 175,000 ton of recycling plant in the UAE. My belief, the road to net zero is a long road. It's not easy, but we believe we can work with other sectors. I mean, for example, I just mentioned about the power sector in the UAE. Also, we're working with the energy sector.
It's interesting to talk about decarbonization of our industry, but we also have to bear in mind that just what we are delivering is part of a solution, because in order to address climate change, we do need to see a radical electrification, and aluminium is absolutely critical, from transmission lines to much higher contents in EVs, etc. It's a very significant demand that we are seeing.
We have to do a better job, particularly in this country, the largest can producer and user, to bringing way more of that material back. That's going to be one of the biggest levers to driving the low carbon transition.
Fantastic, thank you. Would you like to come in?
Well, for some of the colleagues here, we are quote-unquote the customer, and at Mercedes-Benz we have set out about 5 years ago a clear ambition that by 2039 we want to be net carbon zero. And to achieve this target, we are basically addressing expectations to all of our suppliers.
And when we talk about technology, right? So for us, it's two paths when it comes to the primary production. So we have our in-house technology that we develop, but we also look at carbon capture. Now, carbon capture, for most people, will say, well, that's a known technology. Well, the carbon emissions in an aluminum smelter is, so we install our sorting equipment together with them in joint ventures. We do that up in Michigan. To take care, they have this, the collection competence and the collection network. We have quite a bit of competence in terms of sorting, and then we get the high quality alloys out of that, and then we can recycle that up to 75% post-consumer scrap into the metal, and we can use that also for safety critical components in cars. And that's part of what the West also needs to work on. I think if you look to the US and you see the same in Europe, there is tremendous amounts of scrap being exported out of the country. And if you consider this from a strategic raw material perspective in the US, which we're all concerned about, you export some 2.8, 2.5 million tons a year, and you import, north of 3 million tons of aluminum per year.
And we're trying to change that in order to meet our targets. So we have a smelter in Gladstone in Queensland, Australia, and we are right now building Australia's biggest onshore wind farm and Australia's biggest solar farm, and we need more. But it's not enough that you build the renewable energy. One of the things that Western countries need from it, we have the responsibility ourselves as a company, but it does require partnerships, and governments plays an important role there.
So I think unique for our business, we have 300 plus sites around the world. So that creates a unique challenge where we are in many jurisdictions where legislation and regulations just don't exist for you to use renewable energy at a great extent.
That's also where a partnership plays a role. Then when you go further, we also need to consider that the whole transformation of our industry in the end needs to be paid by the end customer. So it needs to be economic viable. We understand when we talk about innovation, innovation is not necessarily viable at the first day. So what we are looking is for what we call lighthouse projects, where we show to the rest of the supply chain what is possible. And if at the end of this innovation path we see that after full deployment of the industrialization there is a viable business case, we're absolutely willing to in a partnership way to financially support these kind of lighthouses.
I think first of all, I very much agree with your comments on IRA, but I think we have to recognize that industrial policy or subsidies, for the lack of a better word, is always a second best solution. The real problem we are dealing with as an aluminium industry is that the world has never been able to put a price on carbon. That's a problem. In a capitalist world, you try to get economics to work, and people say it matters to have less CO2, but it has no economic impact. That's a problem. And that is what we are all scratching our heads with.
We will make Europe less competitive in the global context than what we are today, which is still challenged.
I'm going back. I'm not arguing the point. I think I'm agreeing with the point. Obviously, if you establish a global price of carbon, I mean, what you do is you standardize it across the board.
And typically, our investment decisions are long-term based, and with instability on the policy-making side, this is putting additional burden and risk, and we just see it on the electrification side, where you have incentives that come, that go, that are proposed, that are questioned, and this is an environment that is, I believe, for the whole industry, making the world more complex.